Hello, Fluffle friends. Hello, hello. Welcome to another ASMR story time. Hello, Nebu. Hello, hello. How are you doing tonight? I hope you're doing really, really well. Hope you're having a very good day, a very good evening. If you're not already following Nebu Pookins, please do so. Super fun streamer. What have you been up to, Nebu? Nebu says, are these stories gonna be too spooky for me? I don't know. Are they? You tell me. Let's see. Nebu was playing Liquor and Wine Shop Simulator, Store Simulator. That sounds very fun. How did running the Liquor and Wine Shop go, Nebu? Let's see. Nebu says, just as long as there's no birds or beating hearts should be fine. Oh, I see. I see how it is. This might be the wrong ASMR story time for you then. But yes, hope you're doing well. Welcome in. I have not read Edgar Allan Poe since, I think, high school, which was a very, very, very long time ago. So, I am excited. I am not usually into reading horror. Someone told me that it's not really horror, it's more like suspense, but after doing a little bit of research, I think it probably is also horror. Probably. Nebu says, we somehow collapsed space and time. It was stuck at 7 p.m. forever, so we could keep selling liquor and never had to pay rent since time never went forward. That sounds absolutely amazing. Nebu says, Bunny graduated from high school just last September. Definitely not, definitely not. I am a very old and grizzled bun. I know I don't sound like it, but I am. I am very old. Alright, so I have here in my hands, do you want to hear a little bit of ASMR sounds? We'll do a little crinkles of the cover. It's got a plastic cover on it. I'm not sure if you can hear it all that well. I don't exactly have an ASMR mic. We could do book tappies, book tappies. What I find a little bit hilarious is that no matter what sound I make, my PNG tuber looks like I'm talking. So it looks like the book tappy sounds are coming out of my mouth, which is pretty funny. Okay, so here in my hands I have the complete stories and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I don't really have any specific ones planned. I was going to do the ones that I recognize the names of, and maybe some of the poems, because I'm not familiar with his poems. I read one while doing some research on his works, but I don't remember which one it was, but it was very good. But if anybody listening would like me to read a specific poem or tale, please let me know, and I will find it and read it for you. Let's see. We also have all the sound alerts turned off. I believe I turned off all the sound alerts for new subbies and things like that as well. I hadn't done that until today, so hopefully there will be no surprise sounds. You know what I did forget though? I did forget to see if I could turn off the ads. I hadn't thought of that. It's a bit too late for that now, but that's what I have to remember for next time. So I do apologize for anybody who might have to listen to sudden loud ads. I need to figure out how to turn those off. Nebu says, dang, we can't eat you. Nope, you can't eat the bunny during story time. It would be too distracting. Oh, here's your nice sound if you can hear it. It's me opening the cover back and forth. It's got a plastic cover on it because it's a library book. And you gotta protect the covers. Okay, so let me see. We've got Tales of Mystery and Horror. The Poems. Flights and Fantasies. Oh yes, so something that I didn't know about him was that he's considered, he's credited with inventing the modern detective story, which is really interesting to me. I didn't know that he wrote detective stories. Yeah, I find that very, very fascinating. Let's see. Nebu says, I want to sit next to Newt so I'm in perfect position near your hand for head pats, but also on the opposite side away from the raven. Well, there's 3 ravens. There's 3 ravens in this overlay. If you can find them, we've got this adorable little guy sitting on the cloud next to me, next to that candle. We've got one little guy to my, I guess it'd be my left, your right, sitting on the stone outcropping there. It's not an outcropping. I don't know what to call it. And then there's another little guy over by the ivy. They're kind of hard to spot because they blend in. So let's see. I'm kind of interested in doing some of the poems first, just because I'm not terribly familiar with them. So yeah, let's start with the poems. Let's see, those are way, way, way in the back. I want to say that it was the first poem that I read, which is called Annabelle Lee, but I could be wrong about that. Alright, here are the poems. Okay. And please forgive me if I do not have quite the right cadence or flow with these poems. I did read one, and I think I did okay reading it out loud, but that's okay. This is gonna be poems read in my own style, in bunny style. Bunny style. Okay. This poem is called Annabelle Lee. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived, with whom you may know by the name of Annabelle Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child, and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabelle Lee, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that, long ago, in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabelle Lee, so that her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know, in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we, and neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabelle Lee, and the stars never rise but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. And so, all the night tide, I lie down by my side of my darling, my life and my bride, in the sepulchre there by the sea, and her tomb by the sounding sea. That was pretty. Let's see. Let's do This one's called A Valentine. For her this rhyme is penned, whose luminous eyes, brightly expressive as the twins of Loida, shall find her own sweet name, that, nesting lies upon the page, enwrapped from every reader. Search narrowly the lines, they hold a treasure, divine, a talisman, an amulet, that must be worn at heart. Search well the measure, the words, the syllables, do not forget the oh my goodness, the trivialist point, or you may lose your labor. And yet there is in this no Gordon, oh my goodness. And yet there is in this no Gordian knot, which one might not undo without a saber, if one could merely comprehend the blot, and written upon the leaf where now are peering eyes, scintillating soul, there lies Perdus, 3 eloquent words oft uttered in the hearing of poets by poets, as the name is a poet's too. Its letters, although naturally lying, like the knight Pinto Mendez Ferdinando, still form a synonym for truth. Cease trying. You will not read the riddle, though you do the best you can do. Let's see. Let me try to snooze this ad. There we go. Okay. Then, what follows is, it says, to translate the address, read the first letter of the first line in connection with the second letter of the second line, the third letter of the third line, the fourth of the fourth, and so on to the end. The name will thus appear. Oh, that's really cool. That's really interesting. I'm not going to do it right now, because there would be a lot of silence of me trying to figure it out. But that's neat. It's like a puzzle within the poem. Thank you for the pillows, Dom the Panda. Welcome in. How are we doing today? How are we doing? So many fluffy pillows. Welcome to ASMR Storytime. I hope you are doing well. We are having a spoopy story time. We are reading some Edgar Allan Poe tonight. So get cozy, get a warm cup of something, maybe some tea, maybe some hot chocolate. And cozy on up to some spooky stories. Let's see. Ooh, this is a long one too. Right now we're reading some of Edgar Allan Poe's poems, and then we will get into some stories. As I was saying a little bit ago, I found out that Edgar Allan Poe is considered basically the inventor of modern detective stories, which I found super interesting because I didn't know that he wrote detective stories. Okay, this poem is called Fairyland. Dim vales and shadowy floods and cloudy-looking woods, whose forms we can't discover for the tears that drip all over. Huge moons there wax and wane, again, every moment of the night, forever changing places, and they put out the starlight with the breath from their pale faces. About 12 by the moon dial, one more filmy than the rest, the kind which, upon trial, they have found to be the best, comes down, still down and down, with its center on the crown of a mountain's eminence, while its wide circumference in easy drapery falls over hamlets, over halls, wherever they may be, o'er the strange woods, o'er the sea, over spirits on the wing, over every drowsy thing, and buries them up quite in a labyrinth of light. And then how deep, oh deep, is the passion of their sleep. In the morning they arise, and their moony covering is soaring in the skies, with the tempests as they toss, like almost anything, or a yellow albatross. They use that moon no more for the same end as before. Visit videlicet attempt, which I think extravagant. Its anatomies, however, into a shower to sever, of which those butterflies of earth who seek the skies, and so come down again, never contented things, have brought a specimen upon their quivering wings. Wow, I really liked that one. That was a really good one, guys. Hello, hello, Tabatai. Hello. How are you doing tonight? How are you doing? Welcome, welcome in. If you are not already following Tabatai Tausane, please do so. They are an amazing artist, super cozy streamer, and you should 100% be following them. They recently made a bunny chibi artwork, which I absolutely adore. Welcome in. How are you doing this evening, Tabatai? Let me give you a shout out. Yes, you were playing Cult of the Lamb. That was really fun watching you play it. I know I just caught the last part of it, but that was really super fun. I liked being part of the part of the group. I forget what they're called. Tabatai says, I must stay quiet for ASMR stream. I was gonna say your text is super itty bitty. That's super cute. Alright, we're gonna snooze this other ad. I apologize, you guys. I still haven't figured out or looked into how to turn the ads off for my ASMR streams. I need to do that. But yes, welcome in. Hope you're doing well. We are reading some poems by Edgar Allan Poe, and then we're going to read some of his scary stories. Okay. I really liked this last one, though. It was called Fairyland. I liked that one a whole lot. This one is called To Helen. Helen, thy beauty is to me like those Nicean barks of yore, that gently o'er a perfumed sea the weary, wayworn wanderer bore to his own native shore. On desperate seas long wont to roam, thy hyacinth hair, thy classic face, thy naiad airs have brought me home to the glory that was Greece, and the grandeur that was Rome. Lo, in yon brilliant window niche, how statue-like I see thee stand, the agate lamp within thy hand, ah, Psyche, from the regions which are Holy Land. Let's see. Let's do 2 more poems, and then we will pick a story to read. And if anybody has any specific stories or poems they would like me to read, let me know and I will read them for you. I have the complete stories and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I was very happy that my local library had one in stock. Okay, this poem is called The City in the Sea. Lo, death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone, far down within the dim west, where the good and the bad and the worst and the best have gone to their eternal rest. There shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers that tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours, around by lifting winds forgot, resignedly beneath the sky the melancholy waters lie. No rays from the holy heaven come down on the long night time of that town, but light from out the lurid sea streams up the turrets silently, gleams up the pinnacles far and free, up domes, up spires, up kingly halls, up fanes, up Babylon-like walls, up shadowy, long-forgotten bowers. Oh my goodness, thank you for the follow. Thank you for the follow, Yui Bukai. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Welcome in. Welcome to the Fluffle family. Hope you're having a wonderful day or night. Welcome, welcome. Thank you. Let's see. Up domes, up spires, up kingly halls, up fanes, up Babylon-like walls, up shadowy, long-forgotten bowers of sculptured ivy and stone flowers, up many and many a marvelous shrine, whose wreathed friezes intertwine the vial, the violet, and the vine. Resignedly beneath the sky the melancholy waters lie. So blend the turrets and shadows there, that all seem pendulous in air, while from a proud tower in the town death looks gigantically down. There, open fanes and gaping graves yawn level with the luminous waves, but not the riches there that lie in each idol's diamond eye. Not the gaily jeweled dead tempt the waters from their bed, for no ripples curl, alas, along that wilderness of glass. No swellings tell that winds may be upon some far-off happier sea. No heavings hint that winds have been on seas less hideously serene. But lo, a stir is in the air, the wave, there is a movement there, as if the towers had thrust aside in slightly sinking the dull tide, as if their tops had feebly given a void within the filmy heaven. The waves have now a redder glow, the hours are breathing faint and low, and when, amid no earthly moans, down, down that town shall settle hence, hell rising from 1,000 thrones shall do it reverence. That was a very nice one too. Alright, let me see. I'm going to snooze this ad again. Really quickly, I am going to see if I can somehow turn my ads off, because I feel like I don't like going from being super, super quiet and calm to having really loud ads for you guys all of a sudden. But if I cannot figure it out quickly, I will in fact have to do it later. Let me see really quick, everybody. Okay, maybe I can't actually disable them. I see. Okay. So, from what I'm reading, it seems like I actually cannot disable them unless I choose to do pre-roll ads, which means there is a 3-minute ad at the very beginning of my stream. So that might be worth it on days where I do ASMR, perhaps. But it is too late for that now, so I do apologize for when ads do have to appear, but at least they're only 30 seconds, which isn't so bad. Okay, we're going to do one more poem, and then I think we're going to get into the scary stories. So this poem is called The Sleeper. At midnight in the month of June, I stand beneath the mystic moon. An opiate vapor, dewy dim, exhales from out of her golden rim, and, softly dripping drop by drop, upon the quiet mountain top, steals drowsily and musically into the universal valley. The rosemary nods upon the grave, the lily lolls upon the wave. Wrapping the fog about its rest, the ruin moulders into rest. Looking like leaves seal the lake, a conscious slumber seems to take, and would not for the world awake. All beauty sleeps, and lo, where lies Irene with her destinies. O Lady Bright, can it be right, this window open to the night? The wanton airs from the treetop laughingly through the lattice drop. The bodiless sins a wizard rout. The bodiless airs a wizard rout flit through the chamber in and out, and wave the curtain canopy so fitfully, so fearfully, above the closed and frigid lid, neath which thy slumbering soul lies hid. That o'er the floor and down the wall, like ghosts the shadows rise and fall. O lady dear, hast thou no fear? Why and what art thou dreaming here? Sure thou art come o'er far off seas, a wonder to these garden trees. Strange is thy pallor, strange thy dress, strange above all thy length of tress, and this all solemn silentness. The lady sleeps, O may her sleep, which is enduring, so be deep. Heaven have her in its sacred keep. This chamber changed for one more holy, this bed for one more melancholy. I pray to God that she may lie forever with unopened eye, with the pale sheeted ghosts go, while the pale sheeted ghosts go by. My love, she sleeps, oh may her sleep, as it is lasting, so be deep. Soft may the worms about her creep, far in the forest dim and old, for her may some tall vault unfold, some vault that oft hath flung its black and winged panels fluttering back, triumphant o'er the crested palls of her grand family funerals, some sepulchre remote alone, against whose portal she hath thrown in childhood many an idle stone, some tomb from out whose sounding door she never shall force an echo more, shrilling to think, poor child of sin, it was the dead who groaned within. There is an ad in about 10 or so seconds, guys. So while the ad is playing, just be aware it's going to be probably pretty loud here in a minute. But while it's playing, I will look up one of the stories, one of the spooky stories. So the one that I remember is The Pit and the Pendulum, and I remember it being quite scary to me. So maybe we'll start with that one, since that's the one that I kind of recall. Let's see. Yes, I'm going to wait until the ad is dead. This one is probably kind of graphic, if I recall. Alright, the ads are rolling, guys. Let's see here. Thank you for sticking around through the ad break, everybody. Okay, so we are going to read The Pit and the Pendulum. I feel like it's going to be scary, but I don't remember it very well. When I did look it up again, it did say it was spooky because it sort of describes like the senses of the person who is going through this quite torturous event. But yeah, so I'm curious. Let's read it. Let's read it, guys. It's scary time. The Pit and the Pendulum. Oh boy, so at the very beginning, it looks like, oh gosh, Latin. So please forgive me if I pronounce this Latin incorrectly, because I am not familiar with how to pronounce it correctly. Okay. The Pit and the Pendulum. Impia tortorum longos hic turba furoris sanguinis innocui non satiata aluit sospite nunc padrida or Nope. Patria. Fracto nunc funeris antro. Mors ubi dira fuit vita solisque patent. It says, quatrain composed for the gates of a market to be erected upon the site of the Jacobin clubhouse at Paris. I was sick, sick unto death with that long agony, and when they at length unbound me, and I was permitted to sit, I felt that my senses were leaving me. The sentence, the dread sentence of death, was the last of distinct accentuation which reached my ears. After that, the sound of the inquisitorial voices seemed merged in one dreamy indeterminate hum. It conveyed to my soul the idea of revolution, perhaps from its association in fancy with the burr of a mill wheel. This only for a brief period, for presently I heard no more. Yet for a while I saw that with how terrible an exaggeration, I saw the lips of the black-robed judges. They appeared to me white, whiter than the sheet upon which I trace these words, and thin, even to grotesqueness, thin with the intensity of their expression of firmness, of immovable resolution, of stern contempt of human torture. I saw that the decrees of what to me was fate were still issuing from those lips. I saw them writhe with a deadly locution. I saw them fashion the syllables of my name, and I shuddered because no sound succeeded. I saw, too, for a few moments of delirious horror, the soft and nearly imperceptible waving of the sable draperies which enwrapped the walls of the apartment. And then my vision fell upon the 7 tall candles upon the table. At first they wore the aspect of charity, and seemed white, slender angels who would save me. But then, all at once, there came a most deadly nausea over my spirit, and I felt every fiber in my frame thrill as if I had touched the wire of a galvanic battery, while the angel forms became meaningless specters with heads of flame, and I saw that from them there would be no help. And then there stole into my fancy, like a rich musical note, the thought of what sweet rest there must be in the grave. The thought came gently and stealthily, and it seemed long before it attained full appreciation. But just as my spirit came at length properly to feel and entertain it, the figures of the judges vanished, and, as if magically, from before me the tall candles sank into nothingness, their flames went out utterly, the blackness of darkness supervened, and all sensations appeared swallowed up in a mad rushing descent, as of the soul into Hades. Then silence and stillness and night were the universe. I had swooned, but still will not say that all of consciousness was lost. What of it there remained I will not attempt to define, or even to describe, yet all was not lost. In the deepest slumber, no. In delirium, no. In a swoon, no. In death, no. Even in the grave all is not lost. Else there is no immortality for man. Arousing from the most profound of slumbers, we break the gossamer web of some dream. Yet in a second afterward, so frail that web may have been, we remember not that we have dreamed. In the return to life from the swoon there are 2 stages. First, that of the sense of mental or spiritual. Secondly, that of the sense of physical existence. It seems probable that if, upon reaching the second stage, we could recall the impressions of the first, we should find these impressions eloquent in memories of the gulf beyond. And that gulf is what? How at least shall we distinguish its shadows from those of the tomb? But if the impressions of what I have termed the first stage are not at will recalled, yet after long interval do they not come unbidden, while we marvel whence they come? He who has never swooned is not he who finds strange palaces and wildly familiar faces in the coals that glow. Is not he who beholds floating in mid-air the sad visions that the many may not view? It is not he who ponders over the perfume of some novel flower. Is not he whose brain grows bewildered with the meaning of some musical cadence which has never before arrested his attention? Amid frequent and thoughtful endeavors to remember, amid earnest struggles to regather some token of the state of seeming nothingness into which my soul had lapsed, there have been moments when I have dreamed of success. There have been brief, very brief periods when I have conjured up remembrances which the lucid reason of a later epoch assures me could have had reference only to that condition of seeming unconsciousness. These shadows of memory tell indistinctly of tall figures that lifted and bore me in silence down, down, still, down, till a hideous dizziness oppressed me at the mere idea of the interminableness of the descent. They tell also of a vague horror at my heart on account of that heart's unnatural stillness. Then comes a sense of sudden motionlessness throughout all things, as if those who bore me, a ghastly train, had outrun, in their descent, the limits of the limitless, and paused from the wearisomeness of their toil. After this I call to mind flatness and dampness, and then all is madness, the madness of a memory which busies itself among forbidden things. Very suddenly there came back to my soul motion and sound, the tumultuous motion of the heart and, in my ears, the sound of its beating. Then a pause in which all is blank, then again sound and motion and touch, a tingling sensation pervading my frame. Then the mere consciousness of existence, without thought, a condition which lasted long. Then very suddenly, thought, and shuddering terror, and earnest endeavor to comprehend my true state. Then a strong desire to lapse into insensibility. Then a rushing revival of soul, and a successful effort to move. And now a full memory of the trial, of the judges, of the sable draperies, of the sentence, of the sickness, of the swoon. Then entire forgetfulness of all that followed, of all that a later day and much earnestness of endeavor have enabled me vaguely to recall. So far I had not opened my eyes. I felt that I lay upon my back unbound. I reached out my hand, and it fell heavily upon something damp and hard. There I suffered it to remain for many minutes, while I strove to imagine where and what I could be. I longed, yet dared not to employ my vision. I dreaded the first glance at objects around me. It was not that I feared to look upon things horrible, but that I grew aghast lest there should be nothing to see. At length, with a wild desperation at heart, I quickly unclosed my eyes. The worst thoughts, then, were confirmed. The blackness of eternal night encompassed me. I struggled for breath. The intensity of the darkness seemed to oppress and stifle me. The atmosphere was intolerably close. I still lay quietly and made effort to exercise my reason. I brought to mind the inquisitorial proceedings and attempted from the point to deduce my real condition. The sentence had passed, and it appeared to me that a very long interval of time had since elapsed. Yet not for a moment did I suppose myself actually dead. Such a suspicion, notwithstanding what we read in fiction, is altogether inconsistent with real existence. But where and in what state was I? The condemned to death, I knew, perished usually at the autos de fe, and one of these had been held on the very night of the day of my trial. Had I been remanded to my dungeon to await the next sacrifice, which would not take place for many months? This I at once saw could not be. Victims had been in immediate demand. Moreover, my dungeon, as well as the condemned cells at Toledo, had stone floors, and light was not altogether excluded. Excuse me. A fearful idea now suddenly drove the blood in torrents upon my heart, and for a brief period I once more relapsed into insensibility. Upon recovering, I at once started to my feet, trembling convulsively in every fiber. I thrust my arms wildly above and around me in all directions. I felt nothing, yet dreaded to move a step lest I should be impeded by the walls of a tomb. Perspiration burst from every pore and stood in cold big beads upon my forehead. The agony of suspense grew at length intolerable, and I cautiously moved forward with my arms extended and my eyes straining from their sockets in the hope of catching some faint ray of light. I proceeded for many paces, but still all was blackness and vacancy. I breathed more freely. It seemed evident that mine was not, at least, the most hideous of fates. And now, as I still continued to step cautiously onward, there came thronging upon my recollection 1,000 vague rumors of the horrors of Toledo. Of the dungeons there had been strange things narrated, fables I had always deemed them, but yet strange and too ghastly to repeat, save in a whisper. Was I left to perish of starvation in this subterranean world of darkness, or what fate, perhaps even more fearful, awaited me? That the result would be death, and a death of more than customary bitterness, I knew too well the character of my judges to doubt. The mode and the hour were all that occupied or distracted me. My outstretched hands at length encountered some solid obstruction. It was a wall, seemingly of stone masonry, very smooth, slimy, and cold. I followed it up, stepping with all the careful distrust with which certain antique narratives had inspired me. This process, however, afforded me no means of ascertaining the dimensions of my dungeon, as I might make its circuit and return to the point where I set out, without being aware of the fact, so perfectly uniform seemed the wall. I therefore sought the knife which had been in my pocket, which led into the inquisitorial chamber, but it was gone. My clothes had been exchanged for a wrapper of coarse serge. I had thought of forcing the blade in some minute crevice of the masonry, so as to identify my point of departure. The difficulty, nevertheless, was but trivial, although, in the disorder of my fancy, it seemed at first insuperable. I tore a part of the hem from the robe and placed the fragment at full length and at right angles to the wall. In groping my way around the prison, I could not fail to encounter this rag upon completing the circuit. So at least I thought, but I had not counted upon the extent of the dungeon or upon my own weakness. The ground was moist and slippery. I staggered onward for some time when I stumbled and fell. My excessive fatigue induced me to remain prostrate, and sleep soon overtook me as I lay. Upon awaking and stretching forth an arm, I found beside me a loaf and a pitcher with water. I was too much exhausted to reflect upon this circumstance, but ate and drank with avidity. Shortly after, I resumed my tour around the prison, and with much toil, came at last upon the fragment of the serge. Up to the period where I fell, I had counted 52 paces, and upon resuming my walk, I had counted 45 more, when I arrived at the rag. There were in all, then, 100 paces, and admitting 2 paces to the yard, I presumed the dungeon to be 50 yards in circuit. I had met, however, with many angles in the wall, and thus I could form no guess as at the shape of the vault, for vault I could not help supposing it to be. I had little object, certainly no hope, in these researches, but a vague curiosity prompted me to continue them. Quitting the wall, I resolved to cross the area of the enclosure. At first I proceeded with extreme caution, for the floor, although seemingly of solid material, was treacherous with slime. At length, however, I took courage and did not hesitate to step firmly, endeavoring to cross in as direct a line as possible. I had advanced some 10 or 12 paces in this manner when the remnant of the torn hem of my robe became entangled between my legs. I stepped on it and fell violently on my face. In the confusion attending my fall, I did not immediately apprehend a somewhat startling circumstance, which yet, in a few seconds afterward, and while I still lay prostrate, arrested my attention. It was this: my chin rested upon the floor of the prison, but my lips and the upper portion of my head, although seemingly at a less elevation than the chin, touched nothing. At the same time, my forehead seemed bathed in a clammy vapor, and the peculiar smell of decayed fungus arose to my nostrils. I put forward my arm and shuddered to find that I had fallen at the very brink of a circular pit, whose extent, of course, I had no means of ascertaining at the moment. Groping about the masonry just below the margin, I succeeded in dislodging a small fragment and let it fall into the abyss. For many seconds I hearkened to its reverberations as it dashed against the sides of the chasm in its descent. At length there was a sullen plunge into water, succeeded by loud echoes. At the same moment there came a sound resembling the quick opening and as rapid closing of a door overhead, while a faint gleam of light flashed suddenly through the gloom and as suddenly faded away. I saw clearly the doom which had been prepared for me, and congratulated myself upon the timely accident by which I had escaped. Another step before my fall, and the world had seen me no more, and the death just avoided was of that very character which I had regarded as fabulous and frivolous in the tales respecting the Inquisition. To the victims of its tyranny there was the choice of death with its direst physical agonies, or death with its most hideous moral horrors. I had been reserved for the latter. By long suffering my nerves had been unstrung until I trembled at the sound of my own voice, and had become in every respect a fitting subject for the species of torture which awaited me. Shaking in every limb, I groped my way back to the wall, resolving there to perish rather than risk the terrors of the wells, of which my imagination now pictured many in various positions about the dungeon. In other conditions of mind, I might have had courage to end my misery at once by a plunge into one of these abysses, but now I was the veriest of cowards. Neither could I forget what I had read of these pits, that the sudden extinction of life formed no part of their most horrible plan. Agitation of spirit kept me awake for many long hours, but at length I again slumbered. Upon arousing, I found by my side, as before, a loaf and a pitcher of water. A burning thirst consumed me, and I emptied the vessel at a draught. I must have been drugged, for scarcely had I drunk before I became irresistibly drowsy. A deep sleep fell upon me, a sleep like that of death. How long it lasted, of course, I know not, but when once again I unclosed my eyes, the objects around me were visible. By a wild sulphurous luster, the origin of which I could not at first determine, I was enabled to see the extent and aspect of the prison. In its size I had been greatly mistaken. The whole circuit of its walls did not exceed 25 yards. For some minutes this fact occasioned me a world of vain trouble, vain indeed. For what could be of less importance under the terrible circumstances which environed me than the mere dimensions of my dungeon? But my soul took a wild interest in trifles, and I busied myself in endeavors to account for the error I had committed in my measurement. The truth at length flashed upon me. In my first attempt at exploration, I had counted 52 paces up to the period when I fell. I must then have been within a pace or two of the fragment of surge. In fact, I had nearly performed the circuit of the vault. I then slept, and upon awakening I must have returned upon my steps, thus supposing the circuit nearly double what it actually was. My confusion of mind prevented me from observing that I had begun my tour with the wall to the left and ended it with the wall to the right. I had been deceived, too, in respect to the shape of the enclosure. In feeling my way, I had found many angles, and thus deduced an idea of greater regularity. So potent is the effect of total darkness upon one arousing from lethargy or sleep. The angles were simply those of a few slight depressions or niches at odd intervals. The general shape of the prison was square. What I had taken for masonry seemed now to be iron or some other metal in huge plates, whose sutures or joints occasioned the depression. The entire surface of this metallic enclosure was readily daubed in all the hideous and repulsive devices to which the charnel superstition of the monks has given rise. The figures of fiends and aspects of menace, with skeleton forms and other more really fearful images, overspread and disfigured the walls. I observed that the outlines of these monstrosities were sufficiently distinct, but that the colors seemed faded and blurred, as if from the effects of a damp atmosphere. I now noticed the floor, too, which was of stone. In the center yawned the circular pit from whose jaws I had escaped, but it was the only one in the dungeon. All this I saw indistinctly, and by much effort, for my personal condition had been greatly changed during slumber. I now lay upon my back and at full length on a species of low framework of wood. To this I was securely bound by a long strap resembling a surcingle. It passed in many convolutions about my limbs and body, leaving at liberty only my head and my left arm to such extent that I could, by dint of much exertion, supply myself with food from an earthen dish which lay by my side on the floor. I saw, to my horror, that the pitcher had been removed. I say to my horror, for I was consumed with intolerable thirst. This thirst it appeared to be the design of my persecutors to stimulate, for the food in the dish was meat pungently seasoned. Looking upward, I surveyed the ceiling of my prison. It was some 30 or 40 feet overhead and constructed much as the side walls. In one of its panels, a very singular figure riveted my whole attention. It was the painted picture of Time, as he is commonly represented, save that, in lieu of a scythe, he held what, at a casual glance, I supposed to be the pictured image of a huge pendulum, such as we see on antique clocks. There was something, however, in the appearance of this machine which caused me to regard it more attentively. While I gazed directly upward at it, for its position was immediately over my own, I fancied that I saw it in motion, and an instant afterward the fancy was confirmed. Its sweep was brief and of course slow. I watched it for some minutes, somewhat in fear, but more in wonder. Wearied at length with observing its dull movement, I turned my eyes upon the other objects in the cell. A slight noise attracted my notice, and, looking to the floor, I saw several enormous rats traversing it. They had issued from the well, which lay just within view to my right. Even then, while I gazed, they came up in troops hurriedly, with ravenous eyes, allured by the scent of the meat. From this it required much effort and attention to scare them away. It might have been half an hour, perhaps even an hour, for I could take but imperfect note of time, before I again cast my eyes upward. What I then saw confounded and amazed me. The sweep of the pendulum had increased in extent by nearly a yard. As a natural consequence, its velocity was also much greater. But what mainly disturbed me was the idea that it had perceptibly descended. I now observed with what horror it is needless to say that its nether extremity was formed of a crescent of glittering steel, about a foot in length from horn to horn, the horns upward, and the under edge evidently as keen as that of a razor. Like a razor also, it seemed massy and heavy, tapering from the edge into a solid and broad structure above. It was appended to a weighty rod of brass, and the whole hissed as it swung through the air. I could no longer doubt the doom prepared for me by monkish ingenuity and torture. My cognizance of the pit had become known to the inquisitorial agents, the pit whose horrors had been destined for so bold a recusant as myself, the pit typical of hell and regarded by rumor as the ultima thule of all their punishments. The plunge into this pit I had avoided by the merest of accidents, and I knew that surprise or entrapment into torment formed an important portion of all the grotesquerie of these dungeon deaths. Having failed to fall, it was no part of the demon plan to hurl me into the abyss, and thus, there being no alternative, a different and a milder destruction awaited me. Milder. I half smiled in my agony as I thought of such application of such a term. What boots it to tell of the long, long hours of horror more than mortal during which I counted the rushing vibrations of the steel, inch by inch, line by line, with a descent only appreciable at intervals that seemed ages. Down and still down it came. Days passed, it might have been that many days passed, ere it swept so closely over me as to fan me with its acrid breath. The odor of the sharp steel forced itself into my nostrils. I prayed, I wearied heaven with my prayer for its more speedy descent. I grew frantically mad and struggled to force myself upward against the sweep of the fearful scimitar. And then I fell suddenly calm, and lay smiling at the glittering death as a child at some rare bauble. There was another interval of utter insensibility. It was brief, for upon again lapsing into life there had been no perceptible descent in the pendulum. But it might have been long, for I knew there were demons who took note of my swoon, and who could have arrested the vibration at pleasure. Upon my recovery, too, I felt very, inexpressibly sick and weak, as if through long inanition. Even amid the agonies of that period, the human nature craved food. With painful effort, I outstretched my left arm as far as my bonds permitted, and took possession of the small remnant which had been spared me by the rats. As I put a portion of it within my lips, there rushed to my mind a half-formed thought of joy, of hope. Yet what business had I with hope? It was, as I say, a half-formed thought. Man has many such which are never completed. I felt that it was of joy, of hope, but I felt also that it had perished in its formation. In vain I struggled to perfect, to regain it. Long suffering had nearly annihilated all my ordinary powers of mind. I was an imbecile, an idiot. The vibration of the pendulum was at right angles to my length. I saw that the crescent was designed to cross the region of the heart. It would fray the serge of my robe. It would return and repeat its operation again and again. Notwithstanding its terrifically wide sweep, some 30 feet or more, and the hissing vigor of its descent sufficient to sunder these very walls of iron, still the fraying of my robe would be all that, for several minutes, it would accomplish. Excuse me. Ding Dong Quets, hello, hello, welcome in, good to see you, Thank you, Kusarigami Muro, for the follow, I really appreciate it, thank you, welcome in, welcome to the Fluffle family. Welcome. Ding Dong Quet says good morning, it is good evening for me. But welcome in, how are you doing? If you are not already following Ding Dong Quets, please do so. Let's see if I can type it correctly. We are doing some Spooky ASMR Storytime. Ding dong. Yes, I hope you are doing very, very well. Welcome in. We are currently reading The Pit and the Pendulum. Let's see. The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe. Let's see. I should have marked my spots here. Oh, here we go. I was right at the top. Okay. I dared not go farther in this reflection. I dwelt upon it with a pertinacity of attention, as if, in so dwelling, I could arrest here the descent of the steel. I forced myself to ponder upon the sound of the crescent as it should pass across the garment, upon the peculiar thrilling sensation which the friction of cloth produces on the nerves. I pondered upon all this frivolity until my teeth were on edge. Down, steadily down it crept. I took a frenzied pleasure in contrasting its downward with its lateral velocity. To the right, to the left, far and wide, with the shriek of a damned spirit, to my heart with the stealthy pace of the tiger, I alternately laughed and howled as the one or the other idea grew predominant. Down, certainly, relentlessly down. It vibrated within 3 inches of my bosom. I struggled violently, furiously, to free my left arm. This was free from only from the elbow to the hand. I could reach the latter from the platter beside me to my mouth with great effort, but no farther. Could I have broken the fastenings above the elbow, I would have seized and attempted to arrest the pendulum. I might as well have attempted to arrest an avalanche. Down, still unceasingly, still inevitably down. I gasped and struggled at each vibration. I shrunk convulsively at its every sweep. My eyes followed its outward or upward whirls with the eagerness of the most unmeaning despair. They closed themselves spasmodically at the descent, although death would have been a relief. Oh, how unspeakable! Still, I quivered in every nerve to think how slight a sinking of the machinery would precipitate that keen, glistening axe upon my bosom. It was hope that prompted the nerve to quiver, the frame to shrink. It was hope, the hope that triumphs on the rack, that whispers to the death condemned even in the dungeon of the Inquisition. Let's see. Tibetai says, hope you got some sleep. Were you streaming recently, Ding Dong? I must have missed it if you were streaming recently. I saw that some 10 or 12 vibrations would bring the steel in actual contact with my robe, and with this observation there suddenly came over my spirit all the keen, collected calmness of despair. For the first time during many hours, or perhaps days, I thought. It now occurred to me that the bandage, or I'm not sure why this word is so hard for me. The bandage, or single, which enveloped me, was unique. I was tied by no separate cord. The first stroke of the razor-like crescent, athwart any position of the band, would so detach it that it might be unwound from my person by means of my left hand. But how fearful, in that case, the proximity of the steel! The result of the slightest struggle, how deadly! Was it likely, moreover, that the minions of the torturer had not foreseen and provided for this possibility? Was it probable that the bandage crossed my bosom in the track of the pendulum? Dreading to find my fate, and, as it seemed, my last hope frustrated, I so far elevated my head as to obtain a distinct view of my breast. The surcingle enveloped my limbs and body close in all directions, save in the path of the destroying crescent. Scarcely had I dropped my head back into its original position when there flashed upon my mind what I cannot better describe than as the unformed half of that idea of deliverance to which I have previously alluded, and of which a moiety only floated intermittently through my brain when I raised food to my burning lips. The whole thought was now present, feeble, scarcely sane, scarcely definite, but still entire. I proceeded at once with the nervous energy of despair to attempt its execution. For many hours, the immediate vicinity of the low framework upon which I lay had been literally swarming with rats. They were wild, bold, ravenous, their red eyes glaring upon me as if they waited but for the motionlessness on my part to make me their prey. To what food, I thought, have they been accustomed in the well? They had devoured, in spite of all my efforts to prevent them, all but a small remnant of the contents of the dish. I had fallen into a habitual seesaw or wave of the hand about the platter, and at length the unconscious uniformity of the movement deprived it of effect. In their voracity, the vermin frequently fastened their sharp fangs in my fingers. With the particles of the oily and spicy viand which now remained, I thoroughly rubbed the bandage wherever I could reach it, then, raising my hand from the floor, I lay breathlessly still. At first the ravenous animals were startled and terrified at the change, at the cessation of movement. They shrank alarmingly back, many sought the well, but this was only for a moment. I had not counted in vain upon their voracity. Observing that I remained without motion, one or two of the boldest leapt upon the framework and smelt at the surcingle. This seemed the signal for a general rush. Forth from the well they hurried in fresh troops, they clung to the wood, they overran it, and leaped in hundreds upon my person. The measured movement of the pendulum disturbed them not at all. Avoiding its strokes, they busied themselves with the anointed bandage. They pressured, they swarmed upon me in their ever-accumulating heaps. They writhed upon my throat, their cold lips sought my own. I was half stifled by their thronging pressure. Disgust, for which the world has no name, swelled my bosom, and chilled with a heavy clamness my heart. Yet 1 minute, and I felt the struggle would be over. Plainly I perceived the loosening of the bandage. I knew that in more than one place it must be already severed. With a more than human resolution, I lay still. Nor had I erred in my calculations, nor had I endured in vain. I at length felt that I was free. The surcingle hung in ribbons from my body, but the stroke of the pendulum already pressed upon my bosom. It had divided the serge of the robe, it had cut through the linen beneath. Twice again it swung, and a sharp sense of pain shot through every nerve. But the moment of escape had arrived. At a wave of my hand, my deliveries hurried tumultuously away. With a steady movement, cautious, sidelong, shrinking, and slow, I slid from the embrace of the bandage and beyond the reach of the scimitar. For the moment, at least, I was free. Free. Thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. I do not know how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry. Thank you, though. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the Fluffle family. For the moment, at least, I was free. Free, and in the grasp of the Inquisition. I had scarcely stepped from my wooden bed of horror upon the stone floor of the prison, when the motion of the hellish machine ceased, and I beheld it drawn up by some invisible force through the ceiling. This was a lesson which I took desperately to heart. My every motion was undoubtedly watched. Free, I had but escaped death in one form of agony, to be delivered unto worse than death in some other. With that thought, I rolled my eyes nervously around on the barriers of iron that hemmed me in. Something unusual, some change which at first I could not appreciate distinctly. It was obvious had taken place in the apartment. For many minutes of a dreamy and trembling abstraction, I busied myself in vain, unconnected conjecture. During this period, I became aware for the first time of the origin of the sulphurous light which illuminated the cell, or illumined the cell. It proceeded from a fissure about half an inch in width, extending entirely around the prison at the base of the walls, which thus appeared and were completely separated from the floor. I endeavored, but of course in vain, to look through the aperture. As I arose from the attempt, the mystery of the alteration in the chamber broke at once upon my understanding. I had observed that, although the outlines of the figures upon the walls were sufficiently distinct, yet the colors seemed blurred and indefinite. These colors had now assumed, and were momentarily assuming, a startling and most intense brilliancy that gave to the spectral and fiendish portraitures an aspect that might have thrilled even firmer nerves than my own. Demon eyes of a wild and ghastly vivacity glared upon me in 1,000 directions, where none had been visible before, and gleamed with the lurid luster of a fire that I could not force my imagination to regard as unreal. Unreal, even while I breathed there came to my nostrils the breath of the vapor of heated iron. A suffocating odor pervaded the prison. A deeper glow settled each moment in the eyes that glared at my agonies. A richer tint of crimson diffused itself over the pictured horrors of blood. I panted, I gasped for breath. There could be no doubt of the design of my tormentors. Oh, most unrelenting, oh, most demoniac of men! I shrank from the glowing metal to the center of the cell. Amid the thought of the fiery destruction that impended, the idea of the coolness of the well came over my soul like balm. I rushed to its deadly brink. I threw my straining visions below. The glare from the enkindled roof illuminated its inmost recesses. Yet for a wild moment did my spirit refuse to comprehend the meaning of what I saw. At length it wrestled its way into my soul. It burned itself in upon my shuddering reason. Oh, for a voice to speak! Oh, horror! Any horror but this. With a shriek, I rushed from the margin and buried my face in my hands, weeping bitterly. The heat rapidly increased, and once again I looked up, shuddering as with a fit of the ague, or ague. There had been a second change in the cell, and now the change was obviously in the form. As before, it was in vain that I, at first, endeavored to appreciate or understand what was taking place. But not long was I left in doubt. The inquisitorial vengeance had been hurried by my twofold escape, and there was to be no more dallying with the King of Terrors. The room had been square. I saw that 2 of its iron angles were now acute, 2, consequently, obtuse. The fearful difference quickly increased with a low rumbling or moaning sound. In an instant, the apartment had shifted its form into that of a lozenge. But the alteration stopped not here. I neither hoped nor desired it to stop. I could have clasped the red walls to my bosom as a garment of eternal peace. Death, I said, any death but that of the pit. Fool, I have not known that into the pit it was the object of the burning iron to urge me. Could I resist its glow, or, even that, could I withstand its pressure? And now, flatter and flatter grew the lozenge, with a rapidity that left me no time for contemplation. Its center and, of course, its greatest width came just over the yawning gulf. I shrank back, but the closing walls pressed me resistlessly onward. At length, for my seared and writhing body, there was no longer an inch of foothold on the firm floor of the prison. I struggled no more, but the agony of my soul found vent in one loud, long, and final scream of despair. I felt that I tottered upon the brink. I averted my eyes. There was a discordant hum of human voices. There was a loud blast as of many trumpets. There was a harsh grating as of 1,000 thunders. The fiery walls rushed back, an outstretched arm caught my own as I fell, fainting into the abyss. It was that of General Lasalle. The French army had entered Toledo. The Inquisition was in the hands of its enemies. That was a really good story. Okay, that was The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe. Now, if we'd like, we could do some more poems, or I could pick another scary story. And as before, if anybody has any specific story or work by Edgar Allan Poe that you'd like me to read, please let me know. Let me see here. I have heard of The Telltale Heart, but I don't think that I've read it, or at least I don't remember it. I really don't remember any other ones. I sort of remembered The Pit and the Pendulum. There is The Cask of Amontillado. Let's see here. What else? There is The Raven. For some reason, I thought The Raven was a story, but it must be a poem. Yes. Let's do a few poems, and then perhaps one more story, and then that might be it for the night. So let's see, let's go to The Raven. This is a very large book. It has 816 pages. And the print, the words are very, very small. So this is on page 754. Let's see here. I hope everybody is having a good day or night. I hope you are feeling cozy. Oh yes, The Raven is quite long. Alright, this might be the longest poem I will have ever read. Alright, this is The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of some one gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door, "only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I watched the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, this it is and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and echo murmured back the word Lenore, merely this and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mine of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, was such as nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by a reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press on nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed with an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite and nepenthe from my memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore, quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden if, within the instant Aiden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. That was so good. I really liked that one. It had a really, just a really nice rhythm to it. Alright, let's see. There's going to be an ad break in about 45 seconds, guys. So let's see. We might do... Let's maybe do another poem or two. Yeah. And then maybe one more story. And then I think that will be all. I'm going to go take a very, very quick break when, while the ad is going. So I'm going to put a little bookmark in my book, and I will be right back. Again, there will be an ad in just a moment. My apologies if it is loud, and I will be right back. Hello, hello, I am back. Thank you so much for sticking around through the ad break. Again, apologies if it's loud all of a sudden. Okay, we're going to read a couple more poems and then one more story. This poem is called Romance. Romance who loves to nod and sing, with drowsy head and folded wing, among the green leaves as they shake, far down within some shadowy lake. To me a painted paroquet hath been a most familiar bird, taught me my alphabet to say, to lisp my very earliest word. While in the wild wood I did lie, a child with a most knowing eye. Of late eternal condor years so shake the very heaven on high, with tumult as they thunder by. I have no time for idle cares, through gazing on the unquiet sky, and when an hour with calmer wings its down upon my spirit flings, that little time with lyre and rhyme to while away forbidden things, my heart would feel to be a crime unless it trembled with the strings. The bowers we're at, in dreams I see the wantonest singing birds, our lips and all thy melody of lip-begotten words. Thine eyes in heaven of heart enshrined, then desolately fall, O God, on my funeral mind, like starlight on a pall. Thy heart, I wake and sigh, and sleep to dream till day, of the truth that gold can never buy, of the baubles that it may. Let's see. Let's do one more poem. This one is called Tamerlane. Kind solace in a dying hour, such, Father, is not now my theme. I will not madly deem that power of earth my shrive me of the sin unearthly pride hath revelled in. I have no time to dote or dream, you call it hope, that fire of fire. It is but agony of desire. If I can hope, O God, I can. Its fount is holier, more divine. I would not call thee fool, old man, but such is not a gift of thine. Know thou the secret of a spirit, bowed from its wild pride into shame. O yearning heart, I did inherit thy withering portion with the fame. The searing glory with which hath shone amid the jewels of my throne. Halo of hell, and with the pain not hell shall make me fear again. O craving heart for the lost flowers and sunshine of my summer hours. The undying voice of that dead time, with its interminable chime, rings in the spirit of a spell upon thy emptiness a knell. I have not always been as now the fevered diadem on my brow. I claimed and won unsurprisingly, hath not this same fierce heirdom given Rome to the Caesar, this to me, the heritage of a kingly mind and a proud spirit which hath striven triumphantly with humankind. Tebedai says, I've been looking outside my window so many times wondering why the crow hasn't left, yet only to realize it's from the stream. That's right, I do have some crow noises in the background because I've got some little crows sitting beside me. You were bamboozled, Tebedai. On mountain soil I first drew life, the mists of the Taglay have shed nightly their dews upon my head, and, I believe, the winged strife and tumult of the headlong air have nestled in my very hair. So late from heaven that dew it fell, mid dreams of an unholy night, upon me with the touch of hell, while the red flashing of the light from clouds that hung like banners o'er it appeared to my half-closing eye. The pageantry of monarchy and the deep trumpet thunder's roar came hurriedly upon me, telling of human battle where my own voice, silly child, was swelling. Oh, how my spirit would rejoice and leap within me at the battle cry of victory. The rain came down upon my head, unsheltered, and the heavy wind rendered me mad and deaf and blind. It was but man, I thought, who shed laurels upon me, and the torrent of the chilly air, gurgled within my ear the crush of empires with the captive's prayer, the hum of suitors, and the tone of flattery round a sovereign's throne. My passions from that hapless hour usurped a tyranny which men have deemed since I have reached to power the innate nature, be it so. But father, there lived one who then in my boyhood, when their fire burned with a still intenser glow, for passion must with youth expire, and then who knew this iron heart in woman's weakness had a part. I have no words, alas, to tell the loveliness of loving well, nor would I now attempt to trace the more than beauty of a face whose lineaments upon my mind are shadows on the unstable wind. Thus I remember having dwelt some page of early lore upon with loitering eye till I have felt the letters with their meaning melt to fantasies with none. Oh, she was worthy of all love as in infancy was mine. 'Twas such as angel minds above might envy her young heart the shrine, on which my every hope and thought were incense than a goodly gift, for they were childish and upright, pure as her young example taught. Why did I leave it, and adrift, trust to the fire within for light? We grew in age and love together, roaming the forest and the wild, my breast her shield in wintry weather, and when the friendly sunshine smiled, and she would mark the opening skies, I saw no heaven but in her eyes. Young love's first lesson is the heart, for mid that sunshine and those smiles, when from our little cares apart, and laughing at their girlish wiles, I'd throw me on her throbbing breast, and pour my spirit out in tears. There was no need to speak the rest, no need to quiet any fears, of her who asked no reason why, but turned on me her quiet eye. Yet more than worthy of the love my spirit struggled with and strove, when on the mountainous peak alone ambition lent it a new tone. I had no being but in thee, the world and all it did contain, in the earth, the air, the sea, its joy, its little lot of pain. That was new pleasure, the ideal, dim vanities of dreams by night, and dimmer nothings which were real, shadows and a more shadowy light, parted upon their misty wings, and so confusedly became thine image and a name, two separate yet most intimate things. I was ambitious, have you known? The passion, father, you have not. A cottager, I'd marked a throne of half the world as all my own, and murmured at such lowly lot. But, just like any other dream, upon the vapor of the dew, my own had passed, did not the beam of beauty which did while it throw. The minute, the hour, the day oppress my mind with double loveliness. Thank you so much, Gluco, for the follow. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the Fluffle family. Thank you. And welcome in. I hope you're having a good day or night. We are reading some Edgar Allan Poe works right now. Let's see. Yes. But just like any other dream, upon the vapor of the dew, my own had passed, and not the beam of beauty which did while it through. The minute, the hour, the day oppress my mind with double loveliness. We walked together on the crown of a high mountain which looked down, afar from its proud natural towers of rock and forest on the hills, the dwindled hills, begirt with bowers and shouting with a thousand rills. I spoke to her of power and pride, but mystically in such guise that she didn't deem it naught beside the moment's converse. In her eyes I read, perhaps too carelessly, a mingled feeling with my own. The flush on her bright cheek to me seemed to become a queenly throne, too well that I should let it be light in the wilderness alone. I wrapped myself in grandeur then, and donned a visionary crown. Yet it was not that fantasy had thrown her mantle over me, but that among the rabble, then, lion ambition is chained down, and crouches to a keeper's hand. Not so in deserts where the grand, the wild, the terrible conspire with their own breath to fan his fire. Look round thee now on Samarcand. Is she not queen of earth? Her pride above all cities in her hand, their destinies, and all beside, of glory which the world hath known. Stands she not nobly and alone? Falling, her veriest stepping stone shall form the pedestal of a throne, and who her sovereign to moor, he whom the astonished people saw standing o'er empty empires haughtily, a diademed outlaw. O human love, thou spirit given on earth of all we hope in heaven, which fallest into the soul like rain upon this Syric withered plain, and, failing in thy power to bless, but leavest the heart a wilderness. Idea, which bindest life around with music of so strange a sound, and beauty of so wild a birth, farewell, for I have won the earth. When Hope, the eagle that towered, could see no cliff beyond him in the sky, his pinions were bent droopingly, and homeward turned his softened eye. 'Twas sunset when the sun will part, there comes a sullenness of heart to him who still would look upon the glory of the summer sun. That soul will hate the evening mist, so often lovely, and will list to the sound of the coming darkness, known to those whose spirits hearken, as one who in a dream of night would fly, but cannot from a danger nigh. What though the moon, the white moon, shed all the splendor of her noon? Her smile is chilly, and her beam in that time of dreariness will seem so like you gather in your breath a portrait taken after death. And boyhood is a summer sun, whose waning is the dreariest one, for all we live to know is known, and all we seek to keep hath flown. Let life then, as the day flower, fall with the noonday beauty which is all. I reached my home no more, for all had flown who made it so. I passed from out its mossy door, and though my tread was soft and low, a voice came from the threshold stone of one whom I had earlier known. Oh, I defy thee, hell, to show on beds of fire that burn below an humbler heart, a deeper woe. Father, I firmly do believe, I know, for death who comes for me from regions of the blest afar, where there is nothing to deceive, hath left his iron gate ajar, and rays of truth you cannot see are flashing thro' eternity. I do believe that Eblis hath a snare in every human path, else how, when in the holy grove I wandered of the idol, Love, who daily scents his snowy wings with incense of burnt offerings from the most unpolluted things, whose pleasant bowers are yet so riven above the trellicked rays from heaven, no mote may shun, no tiniest fly, the lighting of his eagle eye. How was it that ambition crept unseen amid the revels there, till growing bold he laughed and leapt in the tangles of love's very hair? Let's see. I think that was the end of that one. is it? Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Alright, so let's read one more story, and then that's probably going to be it for the night. Alright. So the only other one I remember hearing of is the Telltale Heart. Oh, and the Cask of Amontillado. I kind of want to do... well, I'm not sure. Let's do the Cask of Amontillado. I kind of, sort of, know what it's about, but I don't know if I've ever actually read it before. And if I ever have a pause, it's probably because I'm hydrating. Alright, this is the last story of the night, little friends. Thank you again for all those who have followed me today. I really appreciate it. And welcome, welcome in. I hope everybody is having either a wonderful night or a good start to their day, or somewhere in between. Alright, one more, guys. The Cask of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as I best could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is undressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared. He prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity. To practice imposture upon the British and Australian millionaires. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack, but in the matter of old wines he was sincere. In this respect I did not differ from his In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. Dink Dunk says, I did get like 4 hours, also got crowed on. Does it say crowed on? Did you also think the crows were real? Let's see, I hope you get much more sleep today, Ding Dong. I hope you get more than 4 hours. Let's see. It was about dusk one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. but I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts. How, said he, Amontillado, a pipe, impossible, and in the middle of the carnival? I have my doubts, I replied, and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain. Amontillado! I have my doubts. Amontillado, and I must satisfy them. Amontillado. As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucchesi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me, Lucchesi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry, and yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no, I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucchesi, I have no engagement. Come. My friend, no, it is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre. Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lucchesi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire closely about my person. I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood together on the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. The pipe, he said. It is farther on, said I, but observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls. He turned toward me and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. Nitre, he asked at length. Nitre, I replied. How long have you had that cough? I think this is supposed to be him coughing, but I'm not going to do it because it's probably going to be loud. My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. I guess he went into a coughing fit. It is nothing, he said at last. Come, I said with decision. We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucchesi. Enough, he said. The cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough. True, true, I replied. And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this medoc will defend us from the damps. Here I knocked off the neck a bottle with which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mould. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly with while his bells jingled. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human-foot door in a field azure, the foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto, Nemo me impune la cessit. Ding Dong says, coughing ASMR jump scare, that's right. No coughing jump scares. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc? It must be some kind of wine. We had passed through walls of piled bones with casks and puncheons intermingling into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by arm above the elbow. The nitre, I said. See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it is too late. Your cough. It is nothing, he said. Let us go on. But first another draught of the medic. He broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upward with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. You do not comprehend, he said. Not I replied. Then you are not of the Brotherhood. How? You are not of the Masons. Yes, I said. Yes. You? Impossible. A Mason? A Mason, I replied. A sign, he said. It is this, I answered, producing a trowel from beneath the folds of my roquelaire. You jest, he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. But let us proceed to the Amontillado. Be it so, I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt, in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeaux rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains piled to the vaults overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of the interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the fourth the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall, less exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a still interior recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, and height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use within itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. Dink Dunk says, okay, I'm off to work. Have a great stream. Thank you so much, Dink Dunk Quads. Take care. I hope you have a most wonderful day at work. Have a good one. And thank you for being here. Tebedai says, I'm hungry. You should get yourself some food, Tebedai. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depth of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucchesi, he is an ignoramus, interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood simply bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment before I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. Pass your hand, I said, over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitre. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No, then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power. The Amontillado, yes, my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. True, I replied, the Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in a great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction, I ceased my labors and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel and finished without interruption the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, holding the flambeau over the masonwork, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A recession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated, I trembled, and sheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs, and felt satisfied. I reproached the wall, I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed, I aided, I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamor grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion. Of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "Ha ha ha, he! A very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo. Hee hee, over our wine, hee hee hee." "The Amontillado," I said. "Hee hee, yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will they not be awaiting us at the palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone." "Yes," I said, "let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor." "Yes," I said, "for the love of God." But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortunato!" No answer. I called again, "Fortunato!" No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick on account of the dampness of the catacombs. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half a century no mortal has disturbed them. In pace requiescat. Let's see. Okay. I feel like I want to read one more poem because I actually really like the poems. I like the stories too, but the poems are my favorite. So let's see. Let's do... There's one called... There's one called The City and the Sea. Let's see, there's so many actually. Yes, let's do The City and the Sea. And... Okay. That is on page 744. Okay. The City and the Sea. Lo, death has reared himself a throne, and a strange city lying alone, far down within the dim west, where the good and the bad, and the worst and the best, have gone to their eternal rest. Their shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers that tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours, around by lifting winds forgot. Resignedly beneath the sky the melancholy waters lie. No rays from the holy heaven come down on the long night time of that town. But light from out the lurid sea streams up the turrets silently, gleams up the pinnacles far and free, up domes, up spires, up kingly halls, up fanes of Babylon like walls, up shadowy long-forgotten bowers of sculptured ivy and stone flowers, up many and many a marvelous shrine whose wreathed friezes intertwine the vial, the violet, and the vine. We already read this one earlier, but that's okay. I'm gonna read it again. Resignedly beneath the sky the melancholy waters lie, so blend the turrets and shadows there that all seem pendulous in air, while from a proud tower in the town death looks gigantically down. There open fanes and gaping graves yawn level with the luminous waves, but not the riches there that lie in each idol's diamond eye. Not the gaily jeweled dead tempt the waters from their bed, for no ripples curl, alas, along that wilderness of glass. No swellings tell that winds may be upon some far-off happier sea. No heavings hint that winds have been on seas less hideously serene. But lo, a stir is in the air, the wave, there is a movement there, as if the towers had thrust aside, in slightly sinking the dull tide, as if their tops had feebly given a void within the filmy heaven. The waves have now a redder glow, the hours are breathing faint and low, and when amid no earthly moans, down, down that town shall settle hence, hell rising from 1,000 thrones shall do it reverence. Okay, since I had already read that one, let's find one more. There's one called Dreamland on 751. And then I'm going to have to go off to my own dreamland and go to bed. Let's see. Dreamland. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have reached these lands but newly, from an ultimate dim Thule, from a wild, weird clime that lieth sublime, out of space, out of time. Bottomless vales and boundless floods, and chasms and caves and titan woods, with forms that no man can discover, for the tears that drip all over, mountains toppling evermore into seas without a shore, seas that restlessly aspire, surging unto skies of fire, lakes that endlessly outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their still waters, still and chilly, with the snows of the lolling lily. By the lakes that thus outspread their lone waters, lone and dead, their sad waters, sad and chilly, with the snows of the lolling lily. By the mountains near the river, murmuring lowly, murmuring ever, by the grey woods, by the swamp, where the toad and the newt encamp, by the dismal tarns and pools, where dwell the ghouls, by each spot the most unholy, and each nook most melancholy, there the traveller meets aghast sheeted memories of the past. Shrouded forms that start and sigh as they pass the wanderer by, white-robed forms of friends long given in agony to earth and heaven. For the heart whose woes are legion, 'tis a peaceful, soothing region, where the spirit that walks in shadow, 'tis an El Dorado. But the traveller travelling through it may not dare openly view it. Never its mysteries are exposed to the weak human eye unclosed. So wills its king, who hath forbid the uplifting of the frigid lid. And thus the sad soul that here passes beholds it but through darkened glasses. By a route obscure and lonely, haunted by ill angels only, where eidolon named Night Where an eidolon named Night on a black throne reigns upright, I have wandered home but newly from this ultimate dim Thule. Alright, everybody, thank you so much for letting me read you some spooky tales and some really beautiful poems. I did not realize that I would like his writing so very much. I really do. I do enjoy the short stories, but I think the poems are actually my favorite. But yes, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope everybody has a most wonderful day or night. And I am off to bed. Thank you for the stream. Thank you for being here, Tebatai. And I will see everybody tomorrow. Tomorrow, starting around 10:30 a.m. PDT, we will be doing some more community games. So yeah, we're probably just gonna do Jackbox games again, I think. But yeah, if anybody has any suggestions for community games, I would love to see your suggestions on my Discord. A few new people have followed, so if you are still watching, I will go ahead and share my socials here. I have a YouTube where you can see all of my VODs from my past Twitch streams, as well as some other fun things. I have a little music video up there. I'm hoping to add some more things in the future, maybe some more ASMR, not from streaming, but specifically for YouTube. I also have a TikTok, Coffee, and a Discord. Feel free to join the Discord. We get up to some fun things there. But yes, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your night or day, and I will see you all, what will be tomorrow for me, for some community games, and anybody is welcome to join. Thank you for being here. Take care. Bye.